The portal tore open mid-punch. One moment Deadpool was trading blows with Cable in a collapsing timeline. The next he was tumbling through a dimensional rift that smelled like burnt ozone and bad decisions. The mercenary had just enough time to shout something anatomically improbable about the Time Variance Authority before gravity reasserted its authority. He crashed through the roof of Vought Tower at terminal velocity, obliterating a commercial shoot in progress. Cameras toppled. Lighting rigs exploded into sparks. 3 PR executives became physics problems. The carefully staged backdrop proclaiming Homelander as America's greatest hero crumpled beneath red leather and twisted metal. Deadpool groaned, pushing aside a mangled boom mic. His healing factor was already knitting together the fractures in his spine ribs, reforming with wet clicks that would make a chiropractor weep. He sat up in the wreckage, surveying the chaos. Professional-grade cameras still blinked red, recording everything. An intern clutched a clipboard, frozen in shock. Somewhere an alarm began its shrill complaint. The mercenary tilted his head, processing the aesthetics. Glass and chrome everywhere. Corporate branding saturated every surface. The lighting had that specific quality of manufactured perfection, the kind that costs more than authenticity. He'd seen this before. Not this exact building, but the vibe, the energy. "Okay," Deadpool said to no one in particular. "Is this the MCU? Because if it is, my agent seriously undersold my budget." He stood bone settling into their proper arrangements. Wait, this feels off. Like MCU ordered from Wish.com. A security guard rounded the corner, weapon drawn. The man took one look at the crimson-suited figure standing in a crater of broken dreams and corporate property, then screamed into his radio. More boots pounded concrete. More voices joined the chorus of organizational panic. Deadpool noticed the Vought logo stamped on everything. The 7-pointed star. The specific shade of blue that screamed focus-grouped patriotism. His mask hid the grin, but his body language broadcast amusement. He picked up a fallen promotional poster, studied the blonde figure in the red, white, and blue suit. "Oh." The word carried the weight of recognition. "Oh, no. Oh, yes. Oh, this is either the best thing or the worst thing that's ever happened to me, and I've been through some seriously questionable plot lines." The security team burst onto the rooftop, automatic weapons raised. They fanned out with a kind of tactical precision that suggested training videos and quarterly reviews. Their leader, a man whose jawline could cut glass, barked orders with military efficiency. Deadpool waved the poster at them. "Quick question, is that guy with the Superman cosplay still doing the lactation thing, or did he get therapy?" The guards stared, confusion mixing with their adrenaline. "No, still drinking from the source. Fantastic. Love that for him." 3 blocks away, in a warehouse converted into a surveillance hub. Monitors flickered with the chaos. Butcher leaned forward, studying the figure in red. He'd seen enhanced individuals before. Seen Compound V turn ordinary people into weapons. But this felt different. Wrong. Like someone had grabbed a narrative from another story and dropped it into theirs without checking for compatibility. "Who the fuck is that?" Butcher's voice carried the growl of a man who'd stopped being surprised by horror, but never stopped being angry about it. Huey zoomed in on the footage, enhancing the image. "I don't know. He just fell out of nowhere. Like literally appeared mid-air." On the Vought rooftop, Deadpool was still talking to the increasingly bewildered security team. The live stream camera, miraculously intact, continued broadcasting to Vought's social media channels. Thousands of viewers were already tuning in, trying to process what they were witnessing. "Sorry about your co-workers," Deadpool gestured at the bodies beneath the rubble. "In my defense, gravity did most of the work. I was just along for the ride." He paused, considering. "Also, in my defense, I'm pretty sure physics is racist against me specifically. The security leader made a tactical error. He fired. The bullet entered Deadpool's shoulder, exited through his back, and embedded itself in a wall. Blood bloomed across red fabric. The mercenary looked down at the wound, then back up at the shooter. Wow. Rude. The hole was already closing, flesh knitting together with the efficiency of accelerated biology. You know what I'm keeping that bullet. Consider it a souvenir of our meet cute. In the surveillance hub, Huey watched the wound seal itself. His face drained of color. He just healed. Like instantly. Butcher's expression hardened. Of course he fucking did. The rooftop descended into chaos. Security fired. Deadpool dodged with movements that seemed half combat-trained, half interpretive dance. He talked the entire time, commentary pouring out in an unstoppable stream. Every flip came with a quip. Every near miss earned a critique of their aim. And through it all, the camera kept rolling, broadcasting this madness to a world that thought it understood soups. Vaught's carefully constructed narrative crumbling in real time, replaced by something that shouldn't exist. Something that knew it shouldn't exist and didn't care. The security team learned what futility felt like. Bullets passed through Deadpool like suggestions through corporate management. He moved between their formations with the grace of someone who died enough times to stop caring about mortality. Every shot that connected became temporary. Every wound closed before the next volley arrived. One guard tried to tackle him. Deadpool sidestepped, letting momentum carry the man past, then patted him on the back as he stumbled. Good hustle, champ. Really committed to the bit. The live stream camera sat on its toppled tripod lens, still broadcasting to Vaught's official channels. Hundreds of thousands of viewers had logged on, drawn by push notifications about Homelander's latest promotional appearance. Instead, they were watching a man in crimson mock their security infrastructure while regenerating from gunshot wounds. Deadpool noticed the blinking red indicator. Recognition sparked. He stopped mid-dodge, letting a bullet graze his ribs for dramatic effect, then walked straight toward the camera. Security stopped firing, uncertain whether this qualified as a hostage situation. The mercenary crouched before the lens mask, tilted at an angle that somehow conveyed showmanship. Good evening, America. You don't know me yet, but that's about to change. He gestured at the carnage behind him. I just accidentally murdered your PR team. Ratings going up or down. Someone check the metrics. In Vaught's Crisis Management Center, Ashley Barrett watched her career implode in real time. Phones rang with the fury of 1,000 corporate nightmares. The analytics dashboard showed viewer counts spiking into the millions. Comment sections erupted. Social media platforms buckled under the traffic. Cut the feed, she screamed at a technician. Cut it now. The technician's fingers flew across keyboards. It's not responding. Someone locked us out. On the rooftop, Deadpool continued his monologue. See, I'm new to this universe. Just dropped in. Literally. He pointed at the crater. And I'm getting this vibe that you folks take your superheroes very seriously. All this branding, the merchandising, very corporate, very American dream meets shareholder value. He stood addressing the camera like a talk show host who'd weaponized charisma. So, here's my question for the audience at home. That guy in the cape who looks like Superman ate a flag and developed an unsettling maternal fixation. Homelander, is he still pretending to be humanity's savior? Or did someone finally tell him that drinking breast milk on company time is not in fact heroic behavior? The comment sections exploded. Confusion, outrage, laughter. People trying to process whether this was satire, terrorism, or some elaborate marketing stunt gone wrong. Butcher watched from his warehouse, something dangerous blooming in his chest. Hope felt wrong in his line of work, but here was someone calling Homelander exactly what he was broadcast to millions. This mad bastard might be useful. Huey stared at the screen. He's going to get himself killed. If he could die, he'd already be dead. Butcher's smile carried no warmth. Count the shots. Fucker's taken enough lead to stock a pencil factory. Deadpool was still performing. Security had given up shooting, settling for a perimeter they knew wouldn't hold. The mercenary picked up a piece of promotional material, read it with theatrical disgust. Oh, this is rich. The 7. Fantastic Four, but with worse therapy outcomes. He held it toward the camera. Let me guess. The flying one is unstable. The fast one is a junkie. The aquatic one is useless, and the woman actually has principles, so everyone ignores her. Sanchenya. 3 floors down in a green room designed for pre-interview preparation. Homelander watched the broadcast on a monitor. His smile remained fixed, but his hands tightened on the armrests. Leather cracked. Metal groaned. A makeup artist pretended not to notice. Who authorized this? His voice maintained its manufactured warmth, the tone of America's favorite son. But underneath, something else stirred. Something that didn't appreciate being mocked. His handler, a nervous man whose job title changed monthly, stammered. We don't know. He just appeared. Security's handling it. Handling it. Homelander's reflection in the mirror showed the smile starting to fracture. They're standing there while he performs stand-up comedy about me. On the rooftop, Deadpool found the production schedule, read it aloud. Homelander heroic moment number 248. Wow. You're on take 248 of being heroic. That's not authentic behavior. That's method acting with a budget. The live stream hit 10 million concurrent viewers. News outlets picked up the feed. Twitter erupted into tribal warfare. TikTok users created reaction videos. The internet did what it did best, turned tragedy into content, into controversy, into clicks. Vought stock began to drop. Deadpool noticed the helicopter approaching news channel logo visible on its side. He waved. Oh, good, the media's here. Nothing says legitimate crisis like aerial footage. He turned back to the Vought camera. Before security grows a collective spine, let me leave you with this thought. Your heroes are products. Your saviors are actors. Your American dream is a focus group nightmare sold by people who wouldn't save you if it didn't poll well. He brushed debris from his suit. Also, whoever designed this building, fire them. The feng shui is terrible, and the security is worse. The news helicopter's camera captured everything. Ground-level phones recorded from windows. The moment metastasized across platforms unstoppable and viral. Vaught's carefully controlled narrative shattered against the reef of unscripted reality. And somewhere in the building below, Homelander rose from his chair, his smile finally completely gone. The warehouse smelled like concrete dust and bad coffee. Butcher had tracked Deadpool's movements through traffic cameras and social media posts, watching the red-suited anomaly carve a chaotic path through Manhattan. Now the mercenary sat zip-tied to a metal chair, humming what sounded like a theme song from a show that didn't exist in this universe. You done with your little concert? Butcher circled the chair, brass knuckles catching the overhead light. Deadpool stopped mid-hum. Depends. You taking requests, I do a killer rendition of Total Eclipse of the Heart. Mother's Milk stood by the door, arms crossed. This is the guy breaking the internet. Looks like a drunk Spider-Man. Spider-Man wishes he had this ass. Deadpool shifted in the restraints. These zip ties are cute, by the way. Very arts and crafts. Did you make them yourself, or is there a vigilante depot I should know about? Huey hung back, trying to reconcile the footage of supernatural regeneration with the wise-cracking prisoner in front of them. We saw you get shot, multiple times. You should be dead. Should be, could be, refused to be. Deadpool tilted his head toward Huey. Let me guess. You're the moral compass of this operation. The one who still thinks there's a difference between right and wrong that matters. Shut your mouth. Butcher moved closer. You're gonna tell us what you are, where you came from, and why you're making Vaught's life difficult. In that order, because the third one is easy. It's fun. Deadpool rattled the zip ties. As for what I am, that's complicated. Imagine if cancer and willpower had a baby, then gave that baby ADHD and access to katanas. Frenchie emerged from the shadows, studying Deadpool with the intensity of an artist evaluating a masterpiece. Magnifique. The regeneration is not compound V. Different signature entirely. Finally, someone with taste. Deadpool nodded toward the Frenchman. You get it. I'm special. Not in the participation trophy way, in the deeply concerning medical anomaly way. Kimiko entered through the side door, silent as smoke. She circled Deadpool's dark eyes, cataloging every detail. When she got close enough, Deadpool spoke without turning his head. I know you're there. Silent doesn't mean invisible. Also, we have something in common. Trauma-based superpowers and a healthy distrust of people who smile too much. Kimiko's expression didn't change, but she stopped circling. Butcher pulled out a pistol chambered around. Here's how this goes. You give us useful intelligence on Vought, or I put one through your skull and we see if you're lying about that healing factor. Option C. I'm telling the truth about the healing you waste a bullet, and we all feel awkward about it after. Deadpool shrugged. But sure, shoot me. Everyone does eventually. It's like my superpower's superpower. The gunshot cracked through the warehouse. Huey flinched. Frenchie didn't. Mother's Milk sighed like he'd seen this particular brand of stupidity before. The bullet entered Deadpool's temple, exited the other side, and embedded itself in the concrete wall. The mercenary's head snapped back, then slowly righted itself. Blood ran down his mask. Through the holes, they could see skin crawling back together, bone restructuring beneath. 10 seconds, 20, 30, the wound sealed completely. Deadpool rolled his neck. Okay, that one actually hurt. Headshots always feel like reality temporarily forgets I exist. He looked at Butcher. Your turn to feel awkward. Huey stared, face draining of color. I'm going to be sick. Bathroom's that way. Deadpool jerked his head toward a door. Also, these zip ties are getting uncomfortable. Either cut them or commit to the bondage aesthetics. Half measures are weak. Butcher lowered the weapon, mind recalculating. Compound Vive gave powers, sure. Enhanced durability accelerated, healing the usual superhuman package. But this was different. This was something that laughed at mortality while bleeding out. You're not from here. It wasn't a question. Ding, ding, ding. Smart and violent. My favorite combination. Deadpool leaned forward. I'm from a universe where the good guys mostly win the bad guys. Monologue before killing. And everyone wears impractical costumes. You're from a universe where corporate sociopaths wear capes and the public worships them for it. Culture shock has been significant. Mother's Milk exchanged glances with Butcher. He's insane. Insane is subjective. Deadpool brightened. But probably accurate. Point is, I know things about your world that I shouldn't. Plot details. Character arcs. Who's secretly evil? Who's secretly good? Who dies in the season finale? He paused. Spoiler alert, lots of people. This show doesn't fuck around. Frenchie moved closer, fascinated. You speak as if this is fiction. To me it was. Then I fell through a dimensional hole and now it's my Tuesday. Deadpool wiggled in his restraints. So here's my pitch. You need someone who can't die, knows Vaught's secrets, and pisses off Homelander just by existing. I need entertainment and maybe some tacos. We have mutual interests. Butcher studied him. Every instinct screamed not to trust this lunatic. But those same instincts recognized utility when it wore a mask and regenerated brain matter. You work with us, you follow orders. Counteroffer, I work adjacent to you, follow suggestions when they're good, and we both pretend you're in charge. Deadpool grinned behind his mask. Also, someone cut these zip ties before I dislocate my thumbs to escape. I will do it. I've done it before. It's gross. Kimiko stepped forward, produced a knife sliced through the restraints with one clean motion. Deadpool rubbed his wrists, stood stretched like a cat waking from a nap. Fantastic. We're a team now. He looked around the warehouse. This is your headquarters. We need to discuss ambiance. Maybe some throw pillows. A fern. Huey found his voice. You're really going to help us take down Vought? Deadpool considered the question. Help is a strong word. I'm going to be near you while chaos happens. Sometimes that chaos will benefit your goals. Sometimes it'll just be funny. But yeah, Vought needs to burn, and I've got matches. Butcher's jaw tightened. You step out of line, I don't care how fast you heal. Empty threat, but I appreciate the commitment to the aesthetic. Deadpool headed for the door. Now, who wants to tell me where Homelander lives? I have some breaking and entering to commit, and a tight schedule. The boys stood in silence, processing what they'd just recruited. Vought Tower's server room hummed with the sound of expensive infrastructure pretending to be secure. Deadpool sat cross-legged on the floor, laptop balanced on his knees, while the boys maintained lookout positions. Butcher had made it clear this was reconnaissance only. Extract dirt on Homelander, nothing more. This is taking too long. Mother's Milk checked his watch. Security sweeps every 20 minutes. Deadpool's fingers didn't slow on the keyboard. Hacking takes time. Complex algorithms, encryption layers, firewalls built by people who think they're clever. He paused, looked up at nothing in particular. Or I could just try the obvious thing. He typed 4 words into the password field, plot device 123. The system unlocked. Huey leaned over his shoulder. How did you... Shh! Narrative convenience is happening. Deadpool scrolled through directories past personnel files and financial records deeper into the infrastructure. Let's see what skeletons Vought keeps in their digital closet. He found the folder marked Confidential Soups Management. Inside subcategories branched like a taxonomy of corporate evil. Compound V distribution records, soup incident cover-ups, media manipulation protocols, video files dated and labeled with clinical precision. Bingo. Deadpool opened one at random. Homelander younger, but no less unstable, vaporizing a protester with heat vision, while Vought security removed witnesses. The next file showed doctored crime scenes. The one after revealed payments to silence victims. Frenchie whistled low. This is enough to bury them. Oh, we're not burying it. Deadpool's cursor hovered over the upload button. We're cremating it in public. Butcher grabbed his shoulder. Wait. We need to control how this information... Deadpool clicked. The files began uploading to every social media platform simultaneously. Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Reddit, even MySpace just for thoroughness. But he didn't stop there. The feed hijacked Vaught's own livestream channels, replacing their scheduled programming with raw, unedited evidence. What the fuck did you just do? Butcher's voice carried the edge of a man watching careful plans dissolve. I made it impossible to contain. Deadpool kept clicking, spreading the data like a virus designed to destroy reputations. You can't spin this, can't buy it back, can't threaten everyone who sees it. The internet is forever and forever just started. Huey watched the upload counter climb. Tens of thousands of viewers, hundreds of thousands, millions. The files replicated across platforms faster than Vaught's crisis team could react. News outlets picked up the feed within seconds, journalistic instincts overriding corporate relationships. Alarms shrieked through the building. Time to go. Butcher was already moving toward the exit. Deadpool closed the laptop, stood stretched. Probably should have mentioned I was going to do that before I did it. You fucking think Mother's Milk grabbed equipment, shoving it into bags. They ran through corridors as security protocols activated. Doors sealed. Elevator access terminated. The building transformed into a cage designed to trap threats. But the boys knew the maintenance routes, the forgotten spaces where blueprints met reality. Behind them, in executive offices across multiple floors, phones exploded with incoming calls. Stock prices began their descent. Legal teams assembled. PR departments drafted statements that would be obsolete before they finished typing. Ashley Barrett stared at monitors showing every secret Vought had buried, now burning across the internet like wildfire through dry grass. In his penthouse apartment, Homelander watched his phone light up with notifications. Each one another crack in the carefully constructed mythology of his heroism. He saw himself killing civilians, saw the cover-ups, saw Vaught's internal communication, treating him like a volatile asset requiring management. The phone shattered in his grip. Downstairs, Deadpool and the boys burst through an emergency exit into an alley. Sirens wailed in the distance. Helicopters circled overhead. The city's attention focused entirely on Vought Tower and the data hemorrhaging from its servers. That was not the plan. Butcher's accent thickened with fury. Plans are boring. Deadpool brushed debris from his suit. Besides, you wanted to hurt Vought. Mission accomplished. They're hemorrhaging credibility faster than I hemorrhage blood, which is saying something. Frenchie laughed despite himself. He is not wrong. This is beautiful chaos. On every screen across America, people watched Homelander's carefully crafted image crumble. The hero revealed as horror. The savior exposed as monster. Social media erupted into tribal warfare. Defenders screamed fake news. Critics demanded accountability. The truth sat in the middle, undeniable and damning. Vaught's stock dropped 15% in the first hour. Huey checked his phone, scrolling through reactions. People are calling him a murderer. They're saying the 7 are frauds. They are frauds. Butcher's jaw worked. But this needed to be controlled. Surgical. Now it's a fucking stampede. Deadpool shrugged. Stampedes are harder to stop. That's the point. He started walking toward the street. Also, I'm hungry. Anyone know where to get tacos that won't give me food poisoning? The healing factor handles bullets fine, but bad meat is a different story. Behind them, Vought Tower stood against the skyline, its lights burning bright, while everything it represented turned to ash. The carefully managed narrative that had sustained superhero worship for decades collapsed under the weight of its own lies, finally visible to anyone willing to look. And somewhere in that tower, Homelander stood alone, watching his world burn and feeling something he'd never truly experienced before. The fear of being seen for what he actually was. Stage 1 denial. Homelander stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse, watching the city that used to worship him. His reflection stared back, perfect jawline and golden hair unchanged despite the world crumbling around his image. The phone calls had stopped hours ago. No one at Vought wanted to be the messenger who confirmed what the internet already knew. Fake news. His voice carried the rehearsed confidence of 1,000 press conferences. Deep fakes, CGI, edited footage. He repeated the phrases like mantras, testing which one felt most believable. None of them stuck. The evidence was too clean, too extensive, too obviously real. Ashley had tried calling. He'd ignored it. Madeline was long dead, buried with the secrets she'd kept. Stan Edgar had disappeared into whatever hole executives crawled into when their empires faced extinction. There was no one left to spin this into something manageable. The news networks ran 24-hour coverage. Legal experts discussed criminal liability. Victims came forward no longer afraid, now that Vaught's protective infrastructure showed cracks. Twitter trended with hashtags demanding accountability. TikTok users created compilations of his worst moments set to ironic music. Homelander watched it all and told himself it wasn't real. Stage 2 confusion. He found himself in the mirror room without remembering the walk there. the space Vought had built for him to practice his public face, surrounded by reflections, showing every angle of manufactured perfection. Now those reflections showed something else. Uncertainty. Vulnerability. The expression of someone realizing their entire existence had been constructed by people who viewed them as product. I saved people. The words came out softer than intended. I've saved thousands. The mirrors offered no response. He thought about the rescues, the heroic moments captured on camera and broadcast to millions. But now those memories felt contaminated by the knowledge of what happened off camera. The protesters he'd vaporized. The witnesses Vought had silenced. The collateral damage written off as acceptable losses. His reflection fractured across multiple surfaces. Which one was real, the hero America cheered for, or the monster revealed in leaked files? The savior who smiled for cameras, or the weapon Vought had created in a laboratory? Why don't they understand? He spoke to the reflection, seeking validation from the only entity that couldn't abandon him. Everything I did was for them, to protect them. But protection implied choice, implied consent. The files showed a different story. Control masquerading as salvation, violence justified by outcomes. A god playing human because the alternative meant confronting the emptiness where his humanity should have been. Stage 3 rage. The first mirror shattered from heat vision glass, exploding into crystalline fragments. Then the second. The third. Homelander moved through the room systematically, destroying every reflection that dared show him the truth. Beams of concentrated energy carved through walls, melted steel supports, turned the careful construction of his public identity into slag. He roared, and the sound carried enough force to crack windows 3 floors down. Security didn't respond. Everyone with sense had evacuated the building, leaving him alone with his fury and the rubble of his carefully managed life. They dare judge me. Glass crunched under his boots as he paced through the destruction. I am the strongest being on this planet. I could burn cities, topple governments. They exist because I allow it. The rage felt pure. Cleaner than confusion, easier than facing the question of whether he'd ever been more than Vought's attack dog, dressed in patriotic colors. Anger simplified everything into targets and threats, and right now, the entire world qualified as both. His phone, somehow still intact, eyesight buzzed with another news alert. Public approval rating down to 32%. Lower than any soup in recorded history. Lower than villains, who didn't pretend to be heroes. The phone disintegrated in his grip components, fusing from the heat of his frustration. Stage 4. Bitterness. Night fell over Manhattan, and Homelander stood on his balcony, watching the city continue without him. People went about their lives. Cars navigated streets. Restaurants served dinner to customers who probably spent their meals discussing his downfall. The world kept turning indifferent to his crisis. They never loved me. The realization arrived with the weight of truth too obvious to deny longer. They loved what I represented, the idea, the brand. Every cheer had been for Homelander, the product. Every wave aimed at Homelander, the marketing campaign. The actual person beneath the costume, the being created in a lab and raised in isolation, had never mattered to anyone. He was a symbol that sold merchandise and justified Vaught's existence. Madeline had understood that. Stan Edgar had weaponized it. Ashley perpetuated it. Even his supposed teammates in the Seven had treated him like a volatile element requiring careful handling rather than a person deserving connection. If they won't love me. The sentence trailed off, but his mind completed it. Multiple variations, each darker than the last. The bitterness crystallized into something colder, more focused. He'd spent years performing heroism for an audience that now threw stones at his image. Years suppressing his true nature to maintain approval ratings. Years pretending that saving people mattered when all they did was fear him while demanding he protect them. That contract was void now. Stage 5 awakening. Homelander looked at his reflection in the balcony glass. No smile this time. No manufactured warmth. Just the face of something powerful that had finally stopped pretending to be harmless. They want a monster. His voice carried the calm of someone who'd made a decision. I'll show them what a real monster looks like. The heroic facade crumbled completely, revealing what had always lurked beneath. Not evil, exactly. Something more dangerous. A being with godlike power and human insecurities, no longer constrained by the need for approval. No longer performing for cameras or poll numbers. He thought about the person in red who'd triggered this avalanche. The regenerating nuisance who'd exposed Vought's lies and destroyed the carefully maintained illusion of superhero nobility. That one would die first, slowly, publicly. A message to anyone who thought they could mock him without consequences. Then the others. The boys who'd surely helped coordinate the leak. The media figures gleefully reporting his downfall. The civilians who'd turned on him the moment his image cracked. Everyone who'd ever pretended to love him while secretly fearing what he actually was. The city sprawled beneath him. 8 million people going about their lives, unaware that their protector had just decided to become their worst nightmare. Homelander smiled. This time it was real. The Safe House television played Homelander's emergency press conference on loop. Every network carried it. The fallen hero standing at a podium, jaw set, cape draped perfectly despite the circumstances. His publicist had clearly coached him through damage control, teaching him which words to emphasize, where to pause for effect. I understand the American people have questions. Homelander's voice maintained its practiced warmth, though something cold flickered beneath. These allegations are serious, and I take them seriously. But I want to be clear, no one, and I mean no one, can stand against me and expect. He caught himself, adjusted, the mask slipping before settling back into place. Can stand against the truth. Justice will prevail. Deadpool sat on the couch, eating leftover Chinese food, straight from the container, watching with the intensity of someone analyzing a particularly interesting train wreck. Butcher stood nearby, arms crossed, while Huey and Mother's Milk discussed their next move in hushed tones. Did he just almost threaten everyone? Deadpool pointed his fork at the screen. That was like watching someone's therapy breakthrough happen in reverse. He's losing it. Butcher's satisfaction was palpable. Good. Easier to kill when they're sloppy. Homelander continued his speech, words carefully chosen to sound conciliatory while maintaining the edge of someone barely containing violence. To those spreading misinformation, creating chaos, attempting to tear down everything I've built for this country. Another pause. The smile tightened. You're making a mistake. Because I am the real hero here. The only one who matters. No one can challenge that. No one. Deadpool stopped chewing mid-bite. Wait. He leaned forward. Did he just say no one can challenge him? Yeah, why? Huey looked confused by the sudden interest. He said no one. Deadpool stood container forgotten. As in not a single person. As in I don't exist in his threat assessment. Mother's Milk sighed. You're taking this personally, extremely personally. Deadpool grabbed his mask from the coffee table, pulled it on with the deliberation of someone preparing for war. I broke his corporate empire. I exposed his murder spree. I made him trend for all the wrong reasons. And he doesn't even put me on the list. Butcher's expression shifted from satisfaction to concern. Don't do anything stupid. Too late for that advice. Deadpool headed for the door. This stopped being about justice or morality or whatever noble cause you people pretend to have. This is about respect, or the lack thereof, and I don't handle disrespect well. Frenchie appeared from the back room, caught the tail end of the conversation. Mon ami, perhaps we should plan before? Plans are for people with impulse control. Deadpool checked his weapons katanas, settling into their sheaths with familiar weight. I'm going to find America's favorite sociopath and explain in detail why forgetting about me was a tactical error. Huey stepped forward. He'll kill you. He'll try. Then I'll heal. Then he'll try again. Then we'll both get tired and probably end up on some YouTube compilation titled Epic Soup Fails. Deadpool adjusted his belt. The difference is, I think dying is funny. He thinks it's impossible. That's my edge. The press conference continued behind them. Homelander fielding questions with barely concealed contempt. Each answer revealing more of the instability lurking beneath his heroic veneer. A reporter asked about the leaked footage showing civilian casualties. His jaw tightened. Another questioned his fitness to lead the 7. His hands gripped the podium hard enough to crack wood. You see that? Deadpool pointed without turning. That's a man who's never been told no. Never faced real consequences. Never met someone who refuses to die when murdered. He looked back at the boys. I'm about to become his first honest mirror, and he's going to hate what he sees. Butcher recognized the look behind that mask. The particular brand of crazy that made someone dangerous, not despite their insanity, but because of it. If you're going to do this, do it smart. Smart isn't really my brand. Deadpool opened the door. But effective, that I can manage. Wait. Kimiko appeared silent as always, holding out a burner phone. Their eyes met. She made a simple gesture, a question in sign language that roughly translated to, You sure about this? Deadpool took the phone. Not even a little bit. But he called me no one. And I've been called a lot of things, mercenary anti-hero cancer with a conscience that one guy from the movie Ryan Reynolds regrets, but I'm not nobody. He stepped into the hallway, then paused at the threshold. Besides, someone needed to remind him what happens when gods forget they're mortal. The door closed behind him, with finality that made Huey's stomach drop. On the television, Homelander concluded his press conference with manufactured confidence, completely unaware that he'd just made an enemy who couldn't be killed, wouldn't be silenced, and took insults as declarations of war. Butcher watched the screen, then the door calculating odds he didn't like. This is going to get messy. It was always going to get messy. Mother's Milk powered down the TV. At least now it's entertaining. Somewhere between the safe house and Vought Tower. Deadpool pulled out his phone, found Vought's customer service number, and left a voicemail that would make its way to Homelander within the hour. Hey, great value Superman. It's me, the guy you forgot exists. We should talk. I'll be the one who doesn't die when you try to kill me. See you soon, Buttercup. He hung up, whistled a tune that had no business being cheerful given the circumstances, and walked toward a confrontation that would either end spectacularly or just end. Either way, he was going to make it memorable. The rooftop meeting happened at dawn because dramatic confrontations demanded proper lighting. Deadpool arrived first, sitting cross-legged on the ledge of a building adjacent to Vought Tower, eating a breakfast burrito and watching the sunrise paint Manhattan in shades of orange and gold. Peaceful. Almost pretty if you ignored the impending violence. Homelander descended from the sky like a falling star in reverse cape billowing with aerodynamic precision. He landed 20 feet away, boots touching concrete with barely a sound despite the force required to stop that much velocity. Every movement calculated for maximum visual impact, even now. You called? His voice carried the false civility of someone deciding which bones to break first. Deadpool finished chewing, swallowed, then crumpled the burrito wrapper with exaggerated care. I did. Thanks for showing up. Really means a lot that you could pencil me into your busy schedule of public meltdowns and fascist posturing. You're the one. Homelander's jaw tightened, recognition settling in. The chaos agent, the leak, everything. Guilty as charged. Deadpool stood brushed crumbs from his suit. Though Chaos Agent feels reductive, I prefer performance artist specializing in corporate dismantlement. This is your last chance. Homelander's eyes began to glow crimson light building behind blue irises. Apologize. Publicly. Recant everything. Disappear. Or I will end you in ways that make your healing factor irrelevant. Deadpool tilted his head, considering. Counter proposal. You acknowledge that I exist, stop pretending you're a hero, and get therapy for that deeply concerning maternal fixation. We both know the milk thing isn't healthy. The first blast of heat vision came without warning. Deadpool had time to think one word predictable before the beam caught him center mass. The energy burned through Kevlar and flesh with equal efficiency, superheated destruction carving through his torso like a hot knife through butter that happened to be sentient. He dropped body bisected at the waist, upper half sliding away from lower half with the wet sound of biological separation. Blood pooled across concrete. Internal organs steamed in the morning air, the kind of injury that ended fights, ended lives, ended everything. Homelander stood over the wreckage, breathing heavy with satisfaction. That's what happens when you forget your place. 10 seconds passed. 20. The blood stopped flowing, which should have been impossible given the catastrophic nature of the wound. 30 seconds. Something moved in the upper torso, muscles twitching, tissue reconnecting across impossible distances. Okay. Deadpool's voice emerged from the severed half, muffled but functional. That one actually hurt. Like really hurt. Top 5 dismemberments easy. Homelander's expression shifted. Satisfaction to confusion to something he hadn't felt in years. The upper body was pulling itself toward the lower half arms, dragging it across concrete, leaving a trail of rapidly congealing blood. Where the halves met flesh began knitting together with obscene efficiency. What are you? The question came out quieter than intended. Persistent. Deadpool's torso fused back to his leg's spine, reconstructing vertebra by vertebra. Also legally dead in 3 states, but that's unrelated. Homelander fired again this time, aiming for the head. The beam caught Deadpool's shoulder instead, as he rolled the partial dodge, turning fatal damage into merely catastrophic. His entire right arm vaporized from elbow down, bone and muscle reduced to ash. Deadpool looked at the stump. Well, that's inconvenient. I like that arm. Had a watch and everything. The appendage began growing back immediately. Bone pushing out from the cauterized stump, wrapped in muscle, covered in skin. Fingers forming last joints, articulating as cells remembered their blueprint. 60 seconds from vaporization to full regeneration. You can't do that. Homelander's voice carried the edge of someone watching their understanding of reality malfunction. Nothing heals that fast. Not Compound V, not any formula Vought created. Technically correct. The new hand flexed, testing its range of motion. I'm not from your little pharmaceutical playhouse. I'm from a universe where healing factors come standard with a tragic backstory package. Homelander moved faster than human perception, closing the distance and driving his fist through Deadpool's chest. Ribs shattered. Lung tissue pulped. The mercenary's spine cracked from the force of impact, driving him backward into an air conditioning unit. He coughed blood spattering the inside of his mask. Wow. Personal space much. The fist withdrew, and with it came gore. Homelander stared at his hand, dripping with someone else's biology, and felt the wrongness of the situation crystallize. This wasn't how fights worked. The inferior combatant was supposed to stay down. Stay dead. Stop making jokes while their organs regenerated. Deadpool's chest cavity sealed itself, new lung tissue inflating with his next breath. Here's what's happening. You're realizing that your entire power set your whole God complex. It means nothing if your opponent refuses to die. He pulled himself upright, bones clicking back into alignment. Bit of a paradigm shift, huh? I could throw you into the sun. Homelander's hands trembled with something that wasn't anger. You could try, but I'd probably heal on the way down, and we'd have the same conversation on a different rooftop. Deadpool cracked his neck. See, you've never fought someone who treats mortality as a suggestion. Changes the dynamic. Homelander grabbed him by the throat, lifted him off the ground. The grip tightened, crushing trachea and vertebrae. Deadpool kept talking somehow, words garbled, but still comprehensible. Choking's good cardio. I approve. The neck snapped with a sound like breaking wood. Deadpool's head lolled at an unnatural angle, body going limp. Homelander held him there, waiting for confirmation of death, waiting for victory to feel like it used to. Instead, he felt the vertebrae reassembling in his grip, felt the spine straighten, felt the body tense with renewed vitality. Deadpool's head lifted, neck whole again. We doing this all day, or you got places to be? Homelander threw him. Not away, but up. Launched him into the sky with enough force to clear 3 city blocks. Deadpool became a crimson projectile against blue morning, eventually finding gravity's embrace and plummeting toward the Hudson River. The splash sent up a geyser visible from shore. Homelander floated where he'd thrown from, chest heaving with exertion and something else. Something he couldn't name because naming it meant admitting its existence. The thing that lived in the gap between his power and the reality of someone who wouldn't stay dead. He'd killed the same person 4 times in 5 minutes, and the person kept coming back with commentary. Down in the river, Deadpool broke the surface, spitting out water and probably some fish. Round 1 to Homelander on points. He called to no one in particular, but it's a long fight. He swam toward shore, already planning his next move, already thinking about which buttons to push next. Above Homelander, hung suspended in the air, watching the unkillable thing paddle through industrial runoff, and felt the first crack in his certainty that he was untouchable. Some things were worse than enemies who could kill you, like enemies who couldn't be killed. 3 days after the rooftop fight, Deadpool hijacked every screen in Times Square simultaneously. The billboards advertising Vought merchandise flickered, died, then displayed a single feed him, sitting in what looked like a cheap motel room phone, propped on a stack of pizza boxes for the perfect angle. Good evening, America. Your regularly scheduled propaganda has been interrupted for a reality check. The feed spread like wildfire. Social media platforms lit up. News networks scrambled to determine if this was a hack-a-stunt or terrorism. Within 90 seconds, 10 million people were watching. So we need to talk about your hero. Deadpool leaned back casual as someone discussing weather. The blonde one. The flag fetishist. The guy who drinks milk like it's a personality trait. In Vought Tower, Ashley Barrett watched her blood pressure spike alongside the viewer count. Security had been tripled after the leak's firewalls reinforced, yet somehow this lunatic had waltzed through their defenses again. The IT department was currently crying in a server room. Homelander stood in his apartment watching the broadcast, on mute jaw working like he was chewing glass. Here's what you need to understand about Homelander. Deadpool held up a finger. He's not a hero. He's a marketing campaign with a god complex, and mommy issues so deep they'd make Freud weep. The camera wobbled as he adjusted it, then refocused. 3 days ago, he killed me 4 times. Heat vision through the torso, arm vaporization, chest cavity demolition, neck snap, real creative stuff. Deadpool ticked them off like grocery items. And you know what happened. I got better. Every single time. Because here's the secret your corporate overlords don't want you knowing. He leaned closer to the camera, voice dropping to conspiratorial. Your strongest soup can't handle someone who refuses to stay dead. Completely short-circuits his whole worldview. Because Homelanders never faced consequences, never met resistance that didn't crumble, never encountered someone who treats his murder attempts like a minor inconvenience. Across the city in bars and living rooms, people watched. Some laughed. Others felt uncomfortable. Most just kept staring, unable to look away from the train wreck. But here's the really fun part. Deadpool's tone shifted theatrical now. He's scared. I saw it. That little flicker in his expression when I regenerated for the third time. The moment he realized his power means nothing against someone who views mortality as optional. Homelander's fist clenched. The remote in his hand cracked down the middle. And you want to know why he's scared? Deadpool stood, started pacing in the cramped frame. Because you people made him. Fed him worship instead of love. Gave him power instead of purpose. Told him he was special so many times, he started believing it meant he was untouchable. The feed cut to pre-recorded footage pulled from Vaught's own leaked files, showing a young Homelander in a laboratory setting. Scientists taking notes. A child with godlike abilities being studied like bacteria under a microscope. This is your hero's origin story, not bitten by a radioactive American flag, not chosen by destiny, created in a lab, raised in isolation, taught to perform humanity instead of feel it. The image returned to Deadpool. Now he's out there pretending the mask hasn't cracked. Pretending he still has your worship. Pretending that viral videos of him losing control don't exist. He paused for effect. But you've seen them. The meltdown at the press conference, the destruction, the barely contained violence. In an apartment in Brooklyn, Huey watched with the boys, equal parts horrified and impressed. He's going to get himself killed. He's going to get Homelander killed. Butcher's tone carried dark satisfaction. By making him self-destruct. Deadpool continued his monologue, building momentum like a lawyer presenting closing arguments. Here's my message to Homelander, who I know is watching because narcissists can't resist hearing their own name. He looked directly into the camera. You were never loved. You were tolerated. The applause was fear wearing a friendly face. The worship was survival instinct dressed up as admiration. The words hit like bullets through Kevlar. Every smile you got was from people hoping you wouldn't laser them. Every cheer was relief that you picked someone else to terrorize that day. Every "I love you" was a hostage statement. Homelander's breathing quickened, chest tightening with something that felt like drowning. You're not a god. You're a lab experiment that learned to smile for cameras. Deadpool's voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. And the thing about experiments, eventually, they get retired. The feed showed Homelander's public approval ratings updated in real time, dropping as the broadcast continued. 28%, 25, 22. To everyone watching, this is what happens when you give power to someone who was never taught empathy. When you worship strength without questioning character. When you let corporations manufacture your heroes instead of finding real ones. Ashley was on 5 phone calls simultaneously, each one a variation of corporate panic. The board wanted statements. Legal wanted preemptive defense strategies. PR wanted miracles. And Homelander... Deadpool's voice softened to something almost gentle, which made it worse somehow. I know you're standing there watching this, feeling that thing in your chest you can't name. That hollow ache where connection should be. That growing certainty that you're alone in ways that power can't fix. The camera zoomed closer. That feeling, that's reality. And no amount of strength changes it. You can kill me 1,000 times, and I'll keep coming back to remind you you're not special. You're just broken in expensive packaging. Homelander's hands trembled. Not with rage now, but with something raw. The kind of wound that power couldn't cauterize. The difference between us... Deadpool spread his arms. I know I'm a mess. I've made peace with being a disaster. But you still think there's a version of this where people love you for real. Where the worship is genuine. Where you're actually the hero of the story. He dropped his arms. Spoiler alert, you're not. You never were. And everyone knows it now. The broadcast ended abruptly, screens returning to their scheduled programming. But the damage was done viral and spreading. Social media erupted. Think pieces appeared within minutes. The nation watched their hero's mythology burn in real time. In his apartment, Homelander stood alone, surrounded by luxury that felt like a cage, and heard the words echo in the silence. Never loved, never real, just broken. His reflection in the window showed someone he didn't recognize anymore. Or maybe someone he was finally seeing clearly for the first time. Either way, the mask was gone, and beneath it there was nothing but rage. The first casualty was a talk show host who'd spent the morning dissecting Homelander's psychological profile on live television. Homelander descended through the studio skylight during a commercial break heat vision, turning cameras into molten slag before anyone could scream. The host tried to run, made it 3 steps before becoming a cautionary tale about the consequences of analysis. By noon, the death toll reached 17. CNN headquarters burned. Not from accident, but from deliberate architectural violence. Homelander carved his disapproval into their building 1 floor at a time, melting steel supports and shattering glass until the structure collapsed under its own weight. Survivors crawled from rubble filming with shaking hands, uploading footage of America's hero-turned-executioner. The Pentagon convened emergency sessions. Military brass argued protocols for engaging a domestic superhuman threat. Half wanted negotiation. The other half wanted ordnance. Nobody wanted to admit they had no viable options against someone who could fly faster than missiles and shrug off conventional weapons. Deploy everything. The general's voice carried the resignation of someone ordering men to die. He's already declared war. We're just acknowledging reality. In Queens, Homelander found the apartment of a journalist who'd written extensively about Vought's corruption. The woman wasn't home. Her neighbor answered the door instead, apologizing for the confusion. Homelander's fist went through the neighbor's chest anyway, because proximity to guilt was guilt enough in his current mathematics. The jets arrived over Manhattan at 1400 hours. F-22 Raptors carrying payloads designed for bunker penetration. Pilots who'd trained their entire careers for combat against foreign threats, now targeting their own airspace. Homelander met them at 30,000 feet. The first jet exploded before the pilot could confirm visual. The second managed to fire missiles that Homelander caught mid-flight, redirecting them back toward their source. With the casual efficiency of someone returning bad mail. Metal rain fell over the Hudson. 3 pilots ejected. 2 made it. Send more. Homelander hovered in the debris field, speaking to cameras he knew were watching. Send your army. Your weapons. Everything you think makes you powerful. His voice broadcast through emergency channels, hijacking frequencies with ease. I'll show you what power actually means. Capitol Hill descended into paralysis. Representatives shouted over each other, proposing legislation that felt absurd given the circumstances. Impeachment proceedings for someone who'd never held office. Sanctions against an individual who could level cities. Legal frameworks collapsing against the reality of someone who existed outside their jurisdiction. Homelander landed on the steps of Congress boots, touching marble with deliberate slowness. Security rushed forward with weapons that might work against humans. Against him, they were theater. You made me your symbol. He addressed the cameras, the nation, the world. Worshipped me when it was convenient. Condemned me when you learned the truth. But you created this. Every cheer, every dollar spent on merchandise, every time you looked away from what I actually was. A senator tried to speak. Homelander's glare silenced him more effectively than words. No more performances, no more pretending. This is what you wanted: power without accountability. Strength without conscience, a god who'd protect you from everything except himself. He launched skyward sonic boom-shattering windows across the district. In the safe house, The boys watched 17 screens simultaneously tracking destruction patterns and casualties. Butcher's jaw worked with the frustration of watching a plan spiral beyond control. We need to move now. Mother's Milk updated casualty estimates, numbers climbing faster than he could count. Before he decides to level the whole eastern seaboard. With what? Huey's voice cracked. We've got zip ties and harsh language. He just took down fighter jets. Frenchie smoked in silence, something rare and dark in his expression. Even he couldn't find beauty in this particular apocalypse. Kimiko watched footage of Homelander tearing through a military convoy, and her hand signed a single phrase, Monster Unchained. Where's the lunatic in red? Butcher demanded. Unknown. Mother's Milk checked his phone. Last signal pinged near Brooklyn 2 hours ago, then nothing. By nightfall, 17 had become 43. Cities declared martial law. The National Guard mobilized to defend against what marketing had once called America's greatest hero. Social media oscillated between terror and blame, everyone trying to determine whose fault this was while dodging the obvious answer. All of them. Every person who'd cheered, every corporation that had profited, every system that had enabled power without demanding humanity. Homelander stood atop the Empire State Building surveying his burning kingdom. Below, sirens wailed. Helicopters maintained cautious distance. The city that had loved him now cowered, finally understanding what worship of strength without character produced. He felt nothing. No satisfaction in the fear. No pleasure in the destruction. Just the hollow certainty that this was always going to be the ending. The mask was gone. The hero was dead. And what remained had stopped pretending to care about collateral damage. Somewhere in the darkness, a phone buzzed. Homelander's phone miraculously intact, despite everything. A message from an unknown number, just 3 words. Ready for round 2. Deadpool's timing, as always, was impeccable and terrible. The abandoned subway station beneath Brooklyn had been closed since the 70s, forgotten by everyone except urban explorers and people planning ambushes. Deadpool stood in the center of the platform, surrounded by equipment that looked like it belonged in a concert venue, designed by someone with a vendetta against eardrums. Speakers, dozens of them. Industrial grade, the kind that turned sound into a weapon. This seems excessive. Huey helped position another amplifier, wincing at the sheer volume of hardware. Excessive is the point. Deadpool connected cables with the precision of someone who'd done this before. Homelander's got super hearing. Processes every conversation in a 5-block radius, whether he wants to or not. We're going to make him wish he was deaf. Butcher examined the setup, grudging respect bleeding through his skepticism. Frequency attack, among other things. Deadpool gestured at the strobe lights positioned across the tunnel. His vision can see through walls, track heartbeat, zoom to microscopic detail. So we're going to overload the input. Flash him like 1,000 cameras going off simultaneously. Mother's Milk secured the last speaker to its mount. And if this doesn't work, then I die again. And we try something else. Circle of life, very touching. Deadpool pulled out his phone, checking the message he'd sent an hour ago. But it'll work. Because Homelander's coming here angry, which means sloppy. And sloppy is killable. Frenchie adjusted the light rig's artist's eye, finding perfect angles. You are baiting him with ego. His only weakness besides maternal abandonment issues. Deadpool tested one speaker, wincing at the feedback. I told him to meet me here if he had the spine for round 2. Called him a coward. Suggested his cape was compensating for something. Really leaned into the psychological warfare. Kimiko appeared from the shadows, holding something that looked like a mannequin dressed in Starlight's costume. She raised an eyebrow at Deadpool, questioning. Oh, that's the pièce de résistance. Deadpool positioned the dummy near the tunnel entrance. His obsession with Starlight is well documented and deeply uncomfortable. So we're going to put a fake version of her right in his eyeline, make him process whether it's real waste, precious seconds being creepy. That's genuinely disturbing. Huey stared at the mannequin. Thank you, I try. Deadpool added final touches, making it just realistic enough to register as human at first glance. The whole plan is disturbing. We're exploiting every sensory vulnerability a superhuman might have, plus psychological triggers that'd make his therapist quit. The tunnel system stretched in 3 directions, each rigged with different stimuli. Subsonic frequencies that'd vibrate organs. Ultrasonic pitches beyond human range, but crystal clear to enhanced hearing. Strobe patterns designed to induce disorientation. All of it controlled from a single tablet in Deadpool's hands. When he arrives, you lot clear out. Butcher loaded his shotgun despite knowing it was theater. This is between you and him. Touching. But yes, run when the angry god shows up. Smart survival instinct. Deadpool checked his katana's blades, catching the dim emergency lighting. Though stick around long enough to film it, content is content. The ground trembled. Subtle at first, then building. The vibration of something heavy moving fast through underground spaces. He's early. Mother's Milk grabbed his gear. We need to move. Homelander burst through the northern tunnel like a missile with a persecution complex. His landing cracked concrete, sent dust billowing through stale air. The cape settled around him dramatically, despite the lack of wind which suggested he'd practiced the entrance. His face was blood and ash costume torn the veneer of heroism, completely abandoned. This wasn't the man from press conferences. This was something wearing the man's skin, operating on instinct and fury. You. The word came out flat. Dead. The voice of someone beyond negotiation. Me. Deadpool hit the first sequence on his tablet. Every speaker activated simultaneously. Not music. Not even sound in the traditional sense. A wall of overlapping frequencies, each calibrated to assault superhuman hearing. Subsonic bass that vibrated skull bones. Ultrasonic shrieks invisible to normal ears, but devastating to enhanced ones. White noise layered with feedback loops. Homelander's hands went to his ears, instinctive and futile. The sound wasn't coming from one direction. It was everywhere, bouncing off tunnel walls, creating interference patterns that turned his greatest sense into a liability. The strobes followed. Lights flashing at frequencies designed to trigger disorientation. Not fast enough to cause seizures. Deadpool had limits, but fast enough to make tracking movement nearly impossible for vision that processed too much information. Homelander staggered his balance, compromised by sensory input that couldn't be filtered or ignored. His heat vision fired wild, melting tunnels at random, the precision he usually maintained collapsing under the assault. What's wrong? Deadpool's voice cut through the noise via directional speaker, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. Can't handle a little feedback, thought you were supposed to be superior. Homelander lunged toward the voice, found nothing but empty air and the mannequin. He froze for half a second, brain trying to process whether Starlight was actually there. Whether this was real, whether anything was real anymore. That hesitation cost him. Deadpool emerged from the shadows behind him. Katana already in motion. Not aimed to kill, the angle was wrong for that, but to cut. To wound. To prove that gods could bleed when they couldn't see straight. The blade bit deep into Homelander's shoulder, finding the gap where invulnerability thinned near joints. Blood sprayed, actual red blood from someone who thought himself immune to such mundane concerns as bleeding. Homelander spun backhanded Deadpool through 3 support columns. The mercenary's spine shattered against concrete organs pulping from impact force. But the damage was done. Homelander looked at his shoulder, at the blood running down his suit, at the proof that he could be hurt when his senses betrayed him, and felt fear crystallize into something worse. Certainty that he wasn't invincible, just very, very hard to kill. Deadpool pulled himself from the rubble spine, already knitting. Round 2, Buttercup. Let's dance. The sensory assault continued relentless and calculated. Homelander lurched through the tunnel hands pressed against his skull like he could physically block out the frequency's penetrating bone. His invulnerability meant nothing against sound that bypassed flesh, entirely vibrating directly into the brain. Deadpool kept moving, staying just ahead of wild heat vision blasts that carved molten furrows through concrete. The katana had proven a point Homelander could bleed when overwhelmed, but sustaining the advantage required keeping him disoriented. "You know what's funny?" Deadpool's voice bounced through directional speakers, seeming to originate from 6 places simultaneously. "You spent your whole life being stronger than everyone. Never learned to fight when you're not winning." A blast of heat vision melted the speaker. Then another. Homelander was destroying the sources, trying to eliminate the noise through brute force. Strategic thinking collapsing under sensory overload. That's not helping. Deadpool triggered the subsonic frequencies, again deeper this time. The kind that made organs vibrate, that disrupted balance at a fundamental level. You're just making yourself angrier. Homelander's flight became erratic. He couldn't maintain altitude when his inner ear kept receiving contradictory signals. Couldn't track targets when strobes turned his vision into a slideshow of disconnected images. The precision that made him deadly evaporated under the weight of too much input processed too fast. He crashed into a support pillar, shoulder already wounded, taking the impact. The pain was novel, unusual. Something he'd inflicted on others, but rarely experienced himself. It fed the feedback loop of rage and disorientation, each emotion amplifying the other. "Stop running." The words came out, slurred vision swimming. "Fight me. I am fighting you." Deadpool emerged from an alcove, both katanas drawn. "You're just losing." Homelander charged, abandoning strategy for pure violence. His fist connected with Deadpool's sternum, caving the ribcage inward. The mercenary flew backward, spine compressing against tunnel wall, internal organs rupturing from the force. But Deadpool was already healing, chest inflating as lungs reformed. He rolled aside as Homelander's next punch cratered concrete where his head had been. "See, this is the problem." Deadpool's voice was thick with blood he was currently coughing up. "You fight like someone who's never had to worry about consequences. No technique, just power." The strobes intensified. The frequencies shifted to patterns designed to induce maximum disorientation. Homelander's heat vision fired again, but the beam went wide, tracking movement that wasn't there. His breathing had become ragged. Superhuman endurance meant he shouldn't be breathing hard, but the sensory load was burning through reserves faster than his body could replenish them. Every sense screaming simultaneously, demanding attention, creating a feedback loop of overstimulation that his brain couldn't filter. Deadpool saw the moment it broke. Homelander's movements became jerky, uncoordinated. His head snapped toward sounds that didn't exist. His vision tracked targets that weren't there. The sophisticated neurological processing that made him deadly was collapsing under the weight of information it couldn't organize. "You're inside your own head now." Deadpool circled, cautious. "Every sense lying to you. Can't trust your vision, your hearing, your balance. Must be terrifying for someone who's never been vulnerable." Homelander spun, trying to locate the voice. His heat vision activated automatically, a reflexive response to threat. But the beam didn't fire outward. It fired inward. The angle was wrong, the trajectory impossible. Disorientation had scrambled his spatial awareness so completely that his brain misfired the most basic directional command. The beam that should have vaporized Deadpool instead carved through Homelander's own neck at point-blank range. The heat vision cut off immediately as throat tissue vaporized. Homelander's hands went to his neck, finding catastrophic damage that even his healing factor couldn't address fast enough. The wound was too severe, too sudden, inflicted with his own impossible power. He dropped to his knees, cape pooling around him. Deadpool lowered his blades, watching. "You did that yourself. I just made the room spin." Homelander tried to speak, but his vocal cords were ash. His vision was darkening, blood pressure dropping too fast for his body to compensate. The invincible man dying not from enemy action, but from his own misdirected violence. His last thought, crystallizing with painful clarity as consciousness faded, was a question he'd never get answered. Why didn't anyone love me? Not the worship, not the fear wearing a friendly face. Real love. The kind that existed without conditions or performance. He died without finding out. Homelander's body collapsed forward, cape settling over him like a shroud. The most powerful being on Earth, ended by his own power, turned against himself through circumstances he couldn't control. Deadpool stood in silence, watching the corpse. The tunnel's assault finally ceased, speakers powering down, strobes going dark. In the absence of manufactured chaos, only the sound of dripping water and settling debris remained. Huh. Deadpool's tone carried something like surprise. That actually worked. He pulled out his phone fingers, leaving bloody prints on the screen as he dialed. Butcher answered on the first ring. It's done. A pause. Then, he's dead. Very. Deadpool looked at the fallen figure cape, obscuring most of the damage. Killed himself, technically. I just provided the circumstances. We're coming to you. Bring a tarp. This is going to be a media circus when it gets out. Deadpool ended the call, pocketed the phone. He approached Homelander's body, crouched beside it. Beneath the mask, his expression was complicated. Not triumphant, not satisfied, just tired. You could have been better. The words were quiet, meant for no one. Had all that power, all that potential. Could have actually been the hero they needed. He stepped back. Instead, you became exactly what they made you. A product, a weapon. A cautionary tale about what happens when you give godlike abilities to someone who was never taught to be human. Sirens echoed from above, distant but approaching. The world would know soon enough. The fallen hero. The exposed fraud. The tyrant who terrorized a nation before dying in a forgotten tunnel beneath Brooklyn. Deadpool turned toward the exit, leaving Homelander's body for others to find. His work here was finished. Messy, violent, and completely lacking in traditional heroism. But finished nonetheless. Above ground, the sun was rising on a world without Homelander. Whether that made it better or worse remained to be seen. But at least it was honest now. The monster was dead. And the man who'd killed him was already planning where to get breakfast. The media called it liberation. Politicians called it tragedy. The public called it inevitable. Deadpool called it Tuesday and went looking for tacos. The Safe House television played coverage on every channel. Vought's stock had cratered overnight, the company hemorrhaging value faster than its lawyers could draft bankruptcy filings. The Seven disbanded within hours, members scattering like refugees from a sinking ship. Starlight gave one interview, her voice steady, despite obvious exhaustion, talking about accountability and the cost of manufactured heroism. They want to give you a medal. Butcher stood in the doorway watching Deadpool eat directly from a takeout container. Congressional hearing, presidential recognition, the whole dog and pony show. Hard pass. Deadpool didn't look up from his food. Medals come with expectations. Expectations lead to obligations. Obligations are for people with impulse control. Mother's milk sat at the table files spread before him. Vaught's internal documents, now public domain. Evidence of decades of corruption, experimentation, cover-ups. Enough to keep prosecutors busy for years. You ended a threat nobody else could touch. His tone carried reluctant respect. That counts for something. I made a tyrant so unstable he accidentally killed himself. Deadpool set down his food, finally looking at them. That's not heroism. That's just knowing which buttons to push. Huey leaned against the wall, processing everything that had happened in the span of a week. People are alive because of what you did. Homelander was going to keep killing until someone stopped him. People are alive because he had terrible aim when his brain was melting. Deadpool pulled off his mask, revealing the scarred face beneath. I'm not downplaying it. I'm just being honest about what actually happened. Frenchie emerged from the back room carrying beer-distributed bottles with the solemnity of someone performing a wake. To the man who killed the unkillable. To the man who made the unkillable kill himself. Deadpool accepted the bottle. Accuracy matters. They drank in silence, the weight of the week settling over them like dust after demolition. Kimiko appeared last, moving through the space with her characteristic quiet. She approached Deadpool, studied his face with an intensity that made most people uncomfortable. Then she signed something, hands moving with deliberate precision. Deadpool watched, understanding somehow. "You're asking if I'm okay?" She nodded. Honestly, no idea. He looked at his hand still stained with blood that wasn't his. "I've killed a lot of people. Bad people mostly. People who needed killing. But this one feels different." Kimiko signed again. "Why?" "Because everyone's calling me a hero, and I know what I actually am." He met her dark regard. "I'm a weapon that occasionally points in useful directions. That's not the same thing as being good." She considered this, then signed once more. "Good enough." Butcher cleared his throat, breaking the moment. "You planning to stick around, clean up the rest of Vaught's mess?" "Nope." Deadpool pulled his mask back on. "This was personal, not professional. He ignored me, I killed him, we're square. The rest is your problem." "Just like that." Huey's voice carried disbelief. "Just like that." Deadpool stood stretched. "I'm not built for long-term commitment. Ask my therapist." Or would ask if she hadn't filed a restraining order. Mother's Milk gathered his files. "What happens when the next Homelander shows up? Then you call someone who gives a damn about the greater good." Deadpool headed for the door. "I'm going back to my universe, assuming I can find a dimensional rift that doesn't smell like ozone and bad decisions." Butcher followed him to the threshold. "You're more dangerous than he ever was." Deadpool paused, looked back. "Probably. But I'm self-aware about it, which counts for something." "Does it?" "Ask me in a universe where that matters." He stepped into the hallway, then stopped. "Actually, one more thing." "What?" "Tell Starlight she deserves better than this world gave her. Tell Kimiko she's stronger than her trauma. Tell Huey that hesitation isn't weakness." He gestured at the boys collectively. "And tell yourselves that taking down monsters doesn't make you monsters. Just makes you practical." Butcher's jaw worked. That's it." Deadpool raised a hand in farewell. "Try not to die horribly. Or do. I won't be around to see it either way." He walked down the corridor whistling something that might have been a theme song from a show none of them recognized. The sound faded as distance swallowed him, leaving the boys in silence. "Fucking lunatic." Butcher's voice carried something that almost resembled affection. "He saved millions," Huey countered. "He's still a fucking lunatic." Butcher closed the door. "But he's our fucking lunatic. Was our lunatic." On the television, analysts debated the power vacuum Homelander's death had created. Questions about soupy regulation, about Vaught's future, about who would protect America now that its greatest defender had fallen. The boys watched in silence, knowing the answers were more complicated than talking heads could articulate. Above the city, the sun set on the first day of a world without Homelander. It didn't look much different. The same buildings, the same streets, the same people going about their lives. But something fundamental had shifted. The mask was gone. The lies were exposed. The carefully constructed mythology of superhero worship had burned away, leaving only truth in the ashes. Whether that made the world better remained to be seen, but at least it was honest. And somewhere between dimensions, Deadpool found another portal, stepped through without ceremony, and disappeared into whatever universe would tolerate him next. The story ended not with triumph, but with a shrug and a search for decent Mexican food, exactly as it should.